Hi people, how you going? So I'm about to share a story to the page after I've done this video from 7 News Wide Bay. The housing crisis has hit absolute critical to the point where they're now talking about setting up evacuation centres for people to be able to get shelter. So what does that say about a CARD region? Okay, let's start looking at the reasons why people can't get housing, right? Over the last 2 years, so many people have had their rents screwed up so badly by Indu not paying the rents on time, cancelling rental payments without telling people, reducing their housing limit to 0 without telling people, forcing landowners or landlords and real estate agents to re-sign documentation over and over and over again, right? Many people have been evicted from properties because landlords have gotten sick of it. We had one gentleman last year who was knocked back on his rent 10 fortnights in a row. It bounced. You know what I mean? Ended up having to move. I've spoken to people that have moved and ended up living in caravan parks. I've spoken to people that can't get into housing because they've lost housing and they're sleeping in tents. This is not good enough. So, combined with other issues as well, the low rates of social security payments. A student or not a student in our region, because students in our region are exempt from the card, not like everywhere else, but a person on youth allowance, right, especially someone who's on the dependent rate of youth allowance. Let's forget about the COVID supplements at this time, okay? Right, the base rate for a youth allowance up to age 22 is $309 a fortnight. That is not enough to even be able to legally sign a lease. They can't do it because they don't have enough income. Right, somebody on the base rate of job seeker of $565 a fortnight can't pay $300 a week in rent. It's just not possible. Somebody on a disability support pension, somebody on an old age pension, especially single women, right, cannot afford to pay $350, $400 a week in rents. It is ridiculous and ludicrous to expect people to be able to afford this kind of rents on social security payments of any type. So the usual go-to argument that the real estates are hiding behind, because it's the only thing that they can use, is they can say to people, sorry, but this rental is above the 30% limit, which is a cap that the real estates use to assess affordability for you to be able to rent a property, so as not to put you into financial hardship or stress. Which means that some people automatically, they could have been paying, like I know one lady in Bundaberg has been paying $350 a week for 6 years, but because of the 30% rule, she's capped at $280 a week. She has lost count over 50 properties that she's applied to rent for, and she has not been able to gain a secure tenancy as yet. She came this close to actually being kicked out on the street with 5 children, including a newborn at the time, right? Luckily, she was able to get hold of her owner because the real estate wanted her out on the 2nd of November no matter what, right? And the owner is allowing her to stay rent, you know, month to month until she can find something. But she's been searching since March and can't get into anything because the rental cap of $280 a week means that she can't get an appropriate house for her family. You know what I mean? She's applied for over 50 properties. There's more than 50 people applying for each property, and it's getting scarier by the day. But behind the scenes, there's a lot more real estates and a lot more owners that will not rent to people on the Indu Cashless debit card. It has become a barrier to even being able to get housing. It's bad enough being on Centrelink payments, and that is a barrier to getting housing because of how low the payments are. That in itself, right? There is less than 1% of properties available for rent, and that's talking room share across the whole nation when you look at Anglicare stats. all right? Less than 1% of properties are available. That's based on a room share. That's not based on renting a home, okay? So we have a dire crisis up here, and part of the problem is the Indue Cashless debit card is a barrier to getting housing. Centrelink, being on Centrelink payments, is a barrier to getting housing, right? But it is also impacting working families, because working families, I know of a family that was here recently in my town, a working family with 4 kids before Christmas, before the school holidays, and they were begging for housing, and they were offering $400, $450 a week, because they were both working, and they were living in a tent, trying to go to work and get the kids to school from living in a tent. And I kept saying in previous videos that I did on my own personal page, we are going to have a situation where you're going to have tent cities, whether you like it or not. And the councils are going to have to address this issue. Now, the neighbourhood centre is trying to do what they can, but they've got to look at the elephant in the room. Indue Cashless debit card is a major barrier. A lot of owners have said, no, we're not taking people on the card, because they cannot afford the default fees on their mortgages, for their mortgages being paid late, because Indue has stuffed that person around. The money has not been direct debited correctly on the right day, right? It has not gone through the real estate, it's not gone to the owner's accounts on the right days, and owners have gotten sick of not being able to pay their mortgages on time, right? From Western Australia, one of our people was told straight up by one of the owners that she was trying to rent a property from. You know, she was trying to take over a lease. And he was quite honest with her. Got no problems renting to First Nations peoples. I've got no problems renting to people on Centrelink. I will not rent to people on Indue Cashless debit card or Basics card, because of the delays in getting the rents paid, right, was causing him difficulty. And this is a person who basically owns a whole town, who's very familiar with being held up with his late payments, thanks to Indue. Okay, they've had a gut full of it across the Northern Territory. And even here, I was just speaking to my admin in Kalgoorlie. There is still people that after 18 months of being on the card are still a week behind in rent, because of the way Indue stuffs them around. All right, this is not good enough. We have a severe housing crisis happening, and I don't know what the answers are. When they're talking about setting up an evacuation centre to house the homeless, now I haven't had a chance, and I will have a look at it in a minute when I share it over, to watch the whole video. Right, there's a young mum on there who's had to send her child away to live with her father because she's couch surfing. No family should be broken up because they can't get housing. This is pathetic. Housing is a human right, and this country needs to pull its socks up, right? They need to lift benefits up so that people can pay rents. They need to lift up rent assistance. It's still set at 1996 levels, right? So is the payments level, right? So cutting people back from their COVID supplements for the last 6 months that they had the correct rate of payment. And I say the correct rate of payment because that's what the payment would have been if John Howard had not put a freeze on the payments in 1996. So now it's been noticed that pensioners got their freeze on their twice yearly March and September little $10 that we get. That's been frozen, okay, our indexing. But on top of that, right, carers payments only get one increase a year in January, and they've noticed they haven't got their January increase, right? They've been cut out, but no one said boo about the carers having their payment increase frozen as well. So all payments are frozen at whatever rates they're on, whether it be DSP, carers, right, parenting or youth allowance or job seeker or pension rates. All are frozen, but the job seeker and the youth allowance rates are set at 1996 levels still to this day. All right, I don't know what this government wants. They obviously want 1 million people on the streets. They want us to turn into the back streets of America. They want us to turn into India. Who knows? I don't understand why any government would destroy the prosperity of this country and tear down the middle class and try and blame the poor, which is basically what they've been doing. And it won't, these people won't wake up until more and more working families are in those tent cities or evacuation centres. It's pathetic. We need public housing. We need it now, not next 10 years, not 5 houses being built in 10 years. We need hundreds of thousands of houses being built across the country, right? And people need to be able to pay their rents properly. Indu has to stop stuffing up the rents because they've scared off the homeowners now. They don't want to rent to people on the card. With 12,000 people on the card currently outside the Northern Territory, right? And all of the problems of the basics card over the last 13 years that have rendered so many people homeless over the years. This has got to change, and we have to support change to do this. Do you mean? Indu is a barrier to getting housing. Low social security payments of any payment. Of now, how can I say it? Social security is supposed to be the economic stabiliser that protects small business and creates employment and is our economic stabiliser in bad times. Okay? So they have destroyed that so that it cannot do its job. In March, when they were coming on TV saying that they were going to raise the rate by $550 a fortnight, remember, that's up to what it should have been if it had not been frozen in 1996 by John Howard. They actually had to admit to the public that Social Security was an economic stabiliser and they needed it to do its job. Now, by cutting it back down, it's only down to $51 a day for people on base rate, right? Full job seeker payment. Okay. Remember, people who are married couples get less per person. And this is another thing that needs changing. In my opinion, Social Security should be paid individually, irrespective of whether you're married or not, right? As a citizen, you should be entitled to equal payments as your partner, not lose $200 each, right, and have to live on $200 or $300 or $400 less as a couple and be expected to get through. It's cruel, it's a money grab, and all it is an asset stripping design, because unlike the Scandinavian and the Northern Hemisphere systems, right, here, if you lose your job tomorrow, if you can't get another job in the next 3 months, you've got a mortgage to pay, you're finished. Your bank will take your house. You will lose everything. You will find yourself selling every possession that you've got to put food on the table, right, to try and keep up with your bills, to try and keep up with your car payment, your insurance, your school fees, your mortgage, or your rent, or your electricity, or your telephone, or your internet. You will be selling every stick of furniture to do it. This is a nasty, punitive asset stripping system we have, right? And then, well, they're not satisfied until you're broke, till you're destitute. And then they throw a few pennies at you and say, oh, but you're lazy. You know, this system has to change, and we have to change it as people. We have to teach people Social Security is not a privilege. It is a right of being a citizen in this country, something to be proud of, something that needs to be protected from being privatised away, like we're seeing with it being privatised to Indu, where money's being handed over to private institutions, right, given to them for free, right? You know, this is not acceptable. Privatisation of everything, job seeking, you know, the job agencies, the Parents Next programs, everything's being privatised out. It has to stop. It has to stop. Our government's shirking its responsibility to look after the Australian people, working or not, right? And they are determined to destroy our economy. In the next 6 months, you will see so many more people. And they haven't listened to the retail sector, the economists, right? The people who know, who have warned them of a 31 point something billion dollar crash in our industry. Now, at the moment, we have a housing boom, right? Somebody was complaining, the trolls, going, oh, rents have frozen, rents have gone cheaper. No, they haven't. And people that do have money that are desperate are offering 6 months rent in advance, plus extra cash incentives to property managers, right, of a couple of $1,000s here and there to push their way in, right? We're hearing all sorts of stories where the average person can't get in. Somebody was asked for 6 weeks bond instead of 4 weeks, right, recently. And I saw comments from somebody saying they want bond, and instead of 2 weeks, they want 3 weeks in advance, right? At the moment, everybody is at risk of being exploited, but the poorest and our lowest paid workers, right, are at risk of being left in the gutter. And this has to stop. India is the biggest barrier in a card region to getting a house to rent, followed by low payments on Social Security. Our economic stabiliser was put in place to stop this kind of destitution after World War II, so that we would never see the devastation of destitution of women and children in the streets, hungry. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous what's going on. Gary just said to me here, people are offering to pay $750 a week for a 4-bedroom house. Right? How can a single parent with 4 or 5 kids afford that? They can't. They're not getting that much in payments. How can a working person afford that? Right? Even if you've got 2 people working at good jobs, you're talking about giving up a whole wage for the rent. What about the childcare? Well, you give up the other person's wage for childcare so they can both go to work, pay someone else's mortgage off and pay the childcare fees, but they can't live? This is getting stupid, right? And something needs to be stopped, right? This is neoliberal. It's neoliberalism, you know, capitalism at its worst. And unfortunately, this is Thatcherism as well. Who needs a society when all they want is an economy, right? This country, this government is the most destructive government we've ever had in this country. And I think it's going to get a lot worse. There's a reason why they put fencing up around Parliament House as soon as they got in. They knew what they were going to do to this country. When Abbott stood up there and said Australia is for sale, he meant everything and everyone, right? So, oh, this is crazy. Somebody was saying here, to get their house, they had to offer 4 weeks rent on top of a normal bond, plus 2 weeks, and only place we got was accepted was $420 a week. $420 a week. You know, it's ludicrous. It is just ludicrous. And then there's going to come a time when people just can't pay it anymore and the whole lot's going to collapse. The whole lot will just collapse. The housing market will just implode. Only the wealthy people at the moment and investors, speculators, overseas speculators are running around buying up as much property as they can. Right? Mainly US speculators, hedge fund people. But what about the ordinary Australian? All right, I grew up in a country where when I first came here, my mum worked part-time, but most parents didn't work because they were looking after the kids, and Dad went out to work and they could afford the rent, they could afford a mortgage, people could afford to live. Now we've been priced out of living altogether. Gary says a rundown farmhouse here is $350 a week. Yeah, and I can understand. I can fully imagine the wreck of condition it would be in. I remember seeing a property in Hervey Bay that was $275 a week. When I walked in, they didn't even have a decent kitchen. It was disgusting. It was just despicable. And I can remember seeing one being rented out and it had a dirt floor as a kitchen, like a converted garage, and it had some pavers put down for the old stove to sit on, and the windows had been covered up with asbestos sheeting, and they were asking $220 a week. And I can remember when I first came up here, I looked at a place at Howard and it was $165 a week, but it had no kitchen or laundry, none at all. The agent took us around the place, and then halfway through she's like, where's the kitchen? There wasn't one. You know what I mean? And then we went downstairs to underneath, and the flange pipes and the old concrete troughs were not suitable for a washing machine, and it had no way to run a washing machine. And they want $165 a week for a house with no kitchen and no laundry. Go figure. You know, so they get away with a lot here. They don't do a lot of maintenance on properties. There's black mold in properties. The whole lot needs sorting out. All right. I really don't know what to say or suggest. I don't know. But the council's going to have to put up with tent cities around the place, and the services are going to get off their asses and start feeding people in the streets because they don't have a choice. All right? And I think they're going to have to ease up on their camping around the foreshores and stuff like that. And they're just going to have to go easy with people. Most people who are going to be made homeless now, right, the majority of people are only homeless because they can't afford rents. Remember this, 65% of people who are homeless in the city of Sydney, in the central business district of Sydney, have full-time work and they can't afford rent. But they can't move away from that work because it's a job. And if they move somewhere where there's rent that's affordable, then they've got the commute. They can't get back into Sydney, right? Or if they give up their job, they've got no hope of getting another job. So they're stuck, all right? Regional house prices in Tasmania have gone up 12% in the last year. Locals can't afford to buy houses. Airbnb has gutted the urban rental market. No affordable homes. It's just crazy what's going on out there. Justine O'Brien, I have a job part-time and I'm still homeless simply because of lack of housing. It's not good enough, and people need to start demanding that the federal government, right, reinstate the $41 billion that they cut out of the states' housing budgets, right, and start helping the states with housing. Right, there is a lot of empty housing sitting there doing nothing around this country that needs to be utilised. And people like Indu need to get their noses out of it and stop blocking people from renting, right? And stop stuffing up people's rent, right? It's just gone beyond a joke. I don't know how many people they want on the streets, but we can't have this for our kids. This is no future for us, right? This is no future for us, you know what I mean? Oh my God. So, a lady here, her son and his partner working in hospitality as casual. Uh-oh. Sorry, people. Oops. Sorry, I pressed a button. My 87-year-old father and I are sharing a 4-bedroom old house. $790 a week between us. $395 a fortnight each. It's ridiculous. Department of Housing is backed up on a huge wait list. Yeah, there's housing here. I was on the wait list for 8 years, and if I was to try and get a transfer to Brisbane, I'd be on it another 10 years. I'd be dead by the time I got an offer. Right? The solutions are simple. Get rid of the cashless debit card. Get rid of the barrier. Raise the rate to a livable rate, right? Raise the rent assistance, right? Lift the frozen caps that are on these payments. Let people be able to live with some dignity, and start building social housing, creating jobs and employment, and start getting people back into trades and not overseas trades, right? Instead, they've gutted our TAFEs. They've gutted our universities, right? They've destroyed social housing, and this is just, I mean, the article I'm going to post to the page is suggesting to people that they start looking further afield. One of the people that they had on the program has looked in a 900-kilometre radius, 900 kilometres around, right? You've got to remember, a lot of single parents are tied down to a 50-kilometre radius by court orders for their children, where the ex-partner has them locked in. They can't move anywhere because of court orders. This is causing a lot of trauma, and it's not. Yep, scrap the card, raise the rate, okay, and build social housing, creating employment, creating jobs boom, construction boom, trades boom, right, the works. And we need, I don't know, 500,000 houses, not 5 or 10 in the next 5 years. We need 500,000 houses across this country now to start work like now. Right? If the Andrews government can put $5.3 billion into building housing, right, why can't other states, why can't the government chip in? The government is shirking its responsibility at all levels to look after the Australian public. Why? They're only looking after the top 10%. And we, the 90%, need to stand up and say, it's not good enough. You're not looking after us. You're not looking after the workers. You're not looking after our kids. You're not looking after our future. You're selling us out right, left and centre, all right? And it's not fair. It's not on. So I just thought I'd let you know what's going on up here in Hinkler, in the Fraser Coast region, right? We were the 3rd highest for homeless last year, and we were the highest for non-Indigenous youth suicide rate in 2018, right? When they're stripping hope away from people, it's ridiculous, okay? I don't know what the answer is, but we need housing and we need it now. I know that in Maryborough, a lot of the pubs offer room rental, but they don't accept the Indu card. And they're not suitable for families anyway. They're for single people, as they rent a room for $150, $160 a week above a pub. There is one place here that used to be a women's shelter that's been taken over. They're charging $250 for a room. Now, these rooms it's an ex-motel, so they're single rooms with, there's not a lot of room in them, I can tell you that. And they're charging $250 a room a week, which is ludicrous money and unaffordable for anybody on a social security payment. $250 a week is unaffordable. Right, I'm on a disability support pension. $220 a week is my limit. If I was to go over that, I'm then eating into my food budget. And I budget pretty tightly, but I can't afford more than $450 a fortnight maximum to go out on rent. Right? I'm in community housing paying 46% of my payment in rent as it is. And I'm lucky. I'm one of the lucky ones. But I spent 8 years in transitional housing for homeless before I got here. I got bumped along, you know what I mean? And the price of getting this place was, my daughter's not allowed to come and live with me if she ends up homeless. She's got no home to come home to. And they stuck her on dependent rate of youth allowance and expect her to pay rents in Brisbane, you know what I mean? Knowing that these kids can't do it. So a men's shelter in Hobart take 85% of Centrelink payments in rent. 85%, that is absolutely bloody criminal for a shelter to take that much money. But then again, there was a documentary about homelessness in Sydney, and the shelters were leaving people $15 a fortnight to buy food. So they're all on the scrounge. They're all on the screw everybody over. They're all on the take, aren't they? And this needs to be addressed as well. There's a lot of money to be made off the backs of poor people. Poverty has become another for-profit industry, and it shouldn't be like that. You know what I mean? Nobody should be forced to pay 85% of their rent, in rent, of their income in rent. It's just disgusting. It is just disgusting. Well, I'm going to get out of here, and I'll share the article to the page. It was on the news tonight. Go and make your comments. I just want to say, if you're on the cashless debit card and you've lost housing due to being on the card and the late payments, please let us know. Please tell us your stories so that we can get this out there. We have to make it known that Indu is a barrier to getting public housing, or not public housing. Well, I don't know actually, because there seems to be problems with Homes West in Kununurra. 7 more families, including a mum with twins, was made homeless just before Christmas due to Indu not paying rents, and a problem with Homes West in WA, and people obviously not understanding the or not being offered the ability to use Centrepay, right? Yeah, and we have to get it through to politicians' heads. Not every real estate accepts BPay. Not every real estate accepts Centrepay, right? Many don't. People in third-party share accommodation who rent rooms, most of them are not on a fixed dated signed lease, right? And yeah, these things have to be taken into consideration. The card has just caused so much more drama on top of dramas. At the end of the day, the card, the low social security payments, right, are causing destitution. At the end of the day, that's what it's designed to do. And we need to stop that, and we need to stand up as one, and if we have to unite with the other groups that are standing, we will do that. We have to do this, people, right? Because if we don't, our kids are screwed. We're screwed. Our older people are screwed. All right, we have too many, people would probably think I'm being sexist, too many over 50s women that are out there on the streets. That's because they raised kids, they did the family thing, they don't have any super, the hubbies died or left and taken everything, and they've come out the other end having done everything for a lifetime with nothing. And they've been left destitute, right, on job seeker, unable to get the pension because they're not old enough yet, and even when they do get the pension, right, they still won't be able to afford to eat more than sandwiches every day or buy medications. Too bad if they were, like, my mum was spending $300 a month on heart meds. You know what I mean? It was ridiculous. And when my dad passed, she was living on a part pension because she got a little bit of pension from the UK. And Australia took that as well. You know what I mean? It was ridiculous back then. And I'm going back now 12 years since she passed. And she lived in poverty for, you know. Our old people should not be living in poverty at all. Right? Nobody should be living in poverty in this country. The resources of this country, right, are well able to support everybody here with a comfortable lifestyle. This fixation of everybody must work, well, there must be the jobs for people in the first place, right? And by attacking our social security system, by attacking our welfare sector, okay, and attacking every support system that we have, our community sector, our education sector, our TAFE, our universities, everything, they have dismantled everything, right? Freedom is not to be taken for granted, or the illusion of it, right? It has to be fought for, people, right? If you want to save what our grandparents built after the Second World War to give us a better life, which was Medicare, social housing, decent social security rates, then you guys are going to have to get up and fight for it. Okay, if you don't want your parents living in poverty, or you don't want to end up on the streets yourselves, you're going to have to fight for it, working or not. And this is the way we're going to have to do it. We need to get rid of the card. We need to get social housing sorted out, and we need a better rate of payment for everybody across the board. And wages need to be lifted. Because at the moment, this whole system is depressing wages as well. It's keeping the wages down. It has done for the last 25 years. So the workers are being screwed. The penalty rates are being screwed, right? The people who are not working are being screwed. Everybody's being screwed. Everybody's making money out of all of this, right? And yes, somebody just said here, the government are gaslighting us. Of course they are, right? But they're walking around, they're not prepared to take a pay cut themselves. Scott Morrison's not had one pay cut. And yet other world leaders cut down 20%, some cut down 50%. You know what I mean? But no, not Scott Morrison. No. You're not going to interfere with their lifestyle. You know, his mum moved into Kirribilli House, so she's got safe housing paid for by the taxpayer. His meal allowance is $181 a day. You know, people on Social Security don't even see that in a week. All right? It's just pathetic. And another thing that was pointed out to me today as well, the job agencies get paid per person more than what a person actually gets paid in Centrelink payments. Another scam, another way of making money off of people. Meanwhile, those people that go homeless will then be also impacted by the job agencies because they've got nowhere to live. And once you're not you've got no place of abode, you're stuffed. I don't know. I really don't know what the answer is, but we've got social services that is broken. And we've got a government that's just hell-bent on making a profit out of everybody and selling it all off and not looking after the people. So the people are going to have to stand up and look after the people and fight for a better term. And one of the first things we're going to need to do is get rid of this government. Vote them out. And don't rely on Pauline Hanson because she's contributed to this downfall as well, because she always supports the government and she supports the card and she doesn't support people on Social Security. She's got an absolute pet hate about single parents, yet she was one herself. She's the biggest hypocrite on the planet, but she's all right, thank you very much. I'm sitting on $20 million in the bank because she gets all the vote money. Don't vote for her. Don't vote for the Clive Palmers that lie and buy and cheat. Don't vote for the right wing. You want to change this, you're going to have to change the way people vote, right? Our old age pensioners deserve better. Our kids deserve better. We deserve better as a people, right? We don't deserve to be kicked to the curb like this mob are doing to us. We're not criminals. We're not scum, right? And we're not going to tolerate it. And that's the way we need to be. Stand up as proud Australians and say, we're not putting up with this anymore. If you're on the cashless debit card and you've been evicted, please let us know. Please tell us your story. Please let me get it out there to the world. Please let the media know. All right? Don't be ashamed. If you come to me with your story and you don't want your name out there, that's fine. I'll protect your identity. But please tell us. Because I only get to hear about a few. I want to know how many this has really impacted. We need to let the public know this is a problem. It's more than a problem. It's absolutely devastating for people, because then they put their belongings into storage. And then there comes a time where the storage unit fees go up and up and up and people lose all their belongings as well. They end up with nothing, living in a tent or couch surfing because they can't get anything, and they can't get access to the money because it's locked up on the cashless debit card. Right? They can only get their 20%, their $200 every 28 days, maybe. Meanwhile, India's sitting on the money that's racking up in the bank anyway. Not good enough. Anyway, I'm out of here, guys, and I'll leave you guys be. I'll post that article. It's a video from 7 Wide Bay News. And, yeah, leave your comments. And I said, if you're on the card, let us know your situation with your rents. Let us know if you've lost housing. Let us know if you've been knocked back. Let me know if owners have actually been honest with you and said, sorry, I'm not taking anybody with the cashless debit card anymore. I'm hearing stories where one lady has already turned around and said as soon as her tenant moves out, she will never rent to somebody on the cashless debit card again because of the bullshit that they've had to go through. And that's a fair comment. People have to pay their mortgages. They cop default fees too from the banks when they're late with their repayments. Right? The cashless debit card failures have a ripple effect, right, to the landlords, to other financial institutions that are not being paid, and to the family and extended family around that person. It impacts your whole community in so many different ways. And this has to stop. We need to bring dignity back to the Australian public. And we need to be able to support the workers in getting better pay and conditions. And we need to educate the public to support the people who are not working and try and dispel all this crap about the bludgers and the dole bludgers and all this crap, and educate people, in fact, that you're not any different. Somebody who's jobless is not worthless. They're just jobless. Simple as that. And the pandemic has made it 10 times worse than what it was. And it's not going to get any better. And with the cuts to Social Security now, taking money out of the community as we speak, more businesses will close, more jobs will go, more people will become unemployed. And in March, if they lift the pause on the cashless debit card, right, in March, you'll find more people in the trial regions will be being forced onto the card. That's not the way to rescue our economy. That is the way to destroy it. And I said this 5 years ago. The card, right, is a way to destroy our economy from the bottom up. And nobody would listen to me. The politicians wouldn't believe me. Well, look where we are now. Okay? And it's quite obvious that by destroying our social security safety net, right, they are determined to destroy our economy from the bottom up. You know? So, yeah. Some people who have a go, the trolls about jobs, they need to understand that while somebody else is jobless, they've got their job. They need to be thankful for the fact they've still got a bloody job. Right? Because that person over there could have their job tomorrow if anything goes wrong. Anyway, I'm out. I'll talk to you guys later. Stay strong, stay safe, and we're going to fight this year as hard as we can. All right, see you guys.